The small gas station and mechanic shop on Route 47 had been Garrett Walsh's home and livelihood for the past 5 years. At 32, he'd bought the failing business with his savings from the Marines and turned it into a modest but steady operation. It wasn't glamorous, working on cars in the middle of the Nevada desert, but it was his, and it was honest work. The afternoon sun was brutal as Garrett wiped grease from his hands, finishing up an oil change on a trucker's rig. He was looking forward to a cold beer and a baseball game when he heard tires screeching on the highway. A limousine, completely out of place on this desolate stretch of road, had pulled into his lot before it even came to a complete stop. The back door flew open and a young woman tumbled out. She was wearing a wedding dress, an elaborate white gown with a long train that dragged on the dusty ground. Her blonde hair was partially pinned up in what had probably been an elegant style, but was now coming undone. Her makeup was smeared from crying, and she was barefoot, clutching white heels in one hand. "Please," she gasped, running toward Garrett. "Please help me. I need to hide." Behind her, the limousine driver was getting out, a large man in a suit, looking angry and determined. "Ms. Westbrook, get back in the car. Your father is going to be furious." The young woman ignored him, reaching Garrett and grabbing his oil-stained shirt with desperate hands. "Please, I'm begging you. Don't let them take me back. I can't marry him. I can't." Garrett looked from the terrified woman to the approaching driver, his protective instincts from his military days kicking in. Whatever was happening here, this woman was genuinely frightened. "The lady said she doesn't want to go with you," Garrett said calmly, stepping between them. "This is family business," the driver said firmly. "Ms. Westbrook is having pre-wedding jitters. She needs to return to the ceremony." "Jitters," the woman said, her voice rising to near hysteria. "He's 40 years older than me. He's my father's business partner. I don't love him. I barely know him. This isn't jitters. This is my father selling me off like property." Garrett's jaw tightened. He looked at the woman more carefully now. She couldn't have been more than 24 or 25, with blue eyes red from crying and the vulnerability that tugged at something protective in his chest. "She's an adult," Garrett said to the driver. "If she doesn't want to go, she doesn't have to go." "You don't know who you're dealing with," the driver warned. "Richard Westbrook is one of the most powerful men in the country. You do not want to make an enemy of him." "I've faced Taliban fighters," Garrett said flatly. "I think I can handle an angry businessman. Now, the lady has asked for help, and I'm going to give it to her. You can leave peacefully, or I can call the sheriff." The driver looked at Garrett's muscular frame, his military bearing, the unflinching expression on his face, and apparently decided discretion was the better part of valor. "Fine, but Mr. Westbrook will hear about this." He got back in the limousine and drove off, leaving a cloud of dust in his wake. The moment the car disappeared, the young woman's legs gave out. Garrett caught her before she hit the ground, steadying her with gentle hands. "Thank you," she sobbed. "Thank you so much. You have no idea what you just did for me." "Why don't you come inside and tell me?" Garrett said. "You're in shock. You need to sit down." He led her into the small attached convenience store, sat her in the plastic chair behind the counter, and got her a bottle of water. She drank it gratefully, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold the bottle. "I'm Garrett," he said. "Garrett Walsh, and you're apparently Ms. Westbrook, though I'd appreciate a first name if you're comfortable sharing it." "Catherine," she said quietly, "but everyone calls me Cat, and I'm sorry for dragging you into this." The driver was right. "My father is Richard Westbrook, the tech billionaire. He's probably going to make your life hell for helping me." Garrett had heard the name. Westbrook Technologies was one of the biggest companies in Silicon Valley, worth tens of billions. He looked at the young woman in the filthy wedding dress, sitting in his dingy gas station, and tried to reconcile her with that world of wealth and power. "So you're rich," Garrett said, with a shrug. That doesn't change the fact that you were running away from something that terrified you. Want to tell me what happened? The story came out in broken pieces as Catherine calmed down. Her father, obsessed with business alliances and maintaining his empire, had arranged her marriage to Malcolm Price, his 55-year-old business partner. Catherine had protested, pleaded, refused, but her father was immovable. She'd been raised in a world where daughters were assets to be deployed for the family's advantage. I tried to run away twice before, Catherine said, staring at her ruined dress. Both times, he found me within hours. He has private investigators, security teams, connections everywhere. This time, I waited until I was literally walking down the aisle. I figured by the time anyone realized what I'd done, I'd have more of a head start. And you ended up at my gas station, Garrett said. I made the driver stop here, Catherine explained. I told him I was going to be sick from nerves, that I needed to get out for a minute. The moment he slowed down, I jumped out and ran. Garrett looked at her thoughtfully. So what's your plan now? Because I'm guessing your father is going to come looking for you, and this gas station isn't exactly hidden. I don't have a plan, Catherine admitted, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. I just knew I couldn't go through with it. I couldn't spend the rest of my life married to a man I don't love, controlled by my father, living in a gilded cage. I'd rather be poor and free than rich and trapped. Something in her words resonated with Garrett. He'd given up a promising military career because he couldn't stand being controlled, being told what to do, living according to someone else's rules. He understood the desire for freedom, even if it meant giving up security. All right, he said, making a decision. Here's what we're going to do. There's a storage room in the back of the shop. It's not much, but it's got a cot and a lock on the door. You can stay there tonight while we figure out your next move. I can't ask you to do that, Catherine protested. You've already done so much, and when my father finds out, he'll retaliate. He'll shut down your business, ruin your credit, make it impossible for you to work. Let me worry about that, Garrett said. Right now, you need a safe place to be, and I'm offering one. We'll deal with the consequences as they come. That night, Garrett gave Catherine a pair of his sweatpants and a t-shirt to change into, made her a sandwich from his small apartment above the shop, and got her settled in the storage room. The wedding dress hung on a hook, a ghostly reminder of the life she'd run from. As predicted, Richard Westbrook showed up the next morning. 3 black SUVs pulled into the gas station lot at 6 a.m., disgorging a small army of security personnel in dark suits. They were led by a silver-haired man in an expensive suit who radiated authority and barely controlled rage. Garrett met them in the parking lot, deliberately casual in his oil-stained work clothes. I'm looking for my daughter, Richard Westbrook said without preamble. I have witnesses who say she came here yesterday. A lot of people come here, Garrett said mildly. It's a gas station. Don't play games with me, Mr. Walsh, Westbrook snapped. I know everything about you. Dishonorable discharge from the Marines, couldn't hold down a regular job, barely keeping this pathetic business afloat. You're in no position to interfere with my family. Garrett felt anger rise at the mention of his discharge, which had actually been honorable, but had come after he'd testified against a superior officer for abusing his authority. But he kept his voice even. Like I said, lots of people stop here. Can't help you. Westbrook's eyes narrowed. I'm prepared to offer you $50,000 for information about Catherine's whereabouts, or I can make your life a living hell. Your choice. Neither option interests me, Garrett said. Now, if you're not here to buy gas or get your car fixed, you're trespassing. I'd appreciate it if you'd leave. For a moment, Garrett thought Westbrook might order his security team to search the place by force. But they were on public property, and there were limits even to a billionaire's power. Westbrook stared at him with cold fury, then got back in his SUV. This isn't over, he said. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Been threatened by better people than you, Garrett replied, after they left. Catherine emerged from the storage room where she'd been hiding. "He's going to destroy you," she said, her face pale. "Garrett, you need to let me go. I'll figure something else out." "Too late for that," Garrett said. "I've already picked sides. Besides, I've never been good at backing down from bullies, even rich ones." Over the next few days, Westbrook made good on his threats. The bank suddenly called in Garrett's business loan. His suppliers dropped him without explanation. The health inspector showed up with a list of violations that had never existed before. Even some of his regular customers stopped coming, pressured by Westbrook's extensive network. But Garrett adapted. He found new suppliers, scraped together loan payments from his savings, fought the bogus violations. And in the meantime, Catherine proved surprisingly helpful. She knew how to fix a surprising number of car problems, having learned from a mechanic who'd worked for her family. She was smart, resourceful, and determined to earn her keep. "My father thinks money can solve everything," she said one evening as they worked together on a carburetor. "He thinks everyone has a price, that everyone can be bought or intimidated." It never occurred to him that some people have principles that matter more than profit. Garrett looked at her, grease smudged on her cheek, wearing his old clothes, working on a car in the desert heat, and saw someone completely different from the terrified bride who'd stumbled into his life a week ago. She looked happy. "You could go to the authorities," he suggested. "Press charges against your father for forcing you into an arranged marriage." Catherine shook her head. "He never forced me, not technically. He just made it clear that if I didn't comply, I'd be cut off from the family, disowned, cast out with nothing. It's psychological manipulation, not legal coercion. Besides, he has enough lawyers to tie up any case for years." "So, what do you want to do?" Garrett asked. Catherine looked around at the modest gas station, the sunset, painting the desert sky in oranges and purples, at the simple life that Garrett had built with his own hands. "I want to stay here," she said quietly. "I know that sounds crazy. I know I'm a billionaire's daughter who's used to luxury and comfort. But I've been happier this week, working on cars with you, living in a storage room, than I've been in years living in my father's mansion." "That's the adrenaline talking," Garrett said. "The relief of escaping. Give it time." But weeks passed, and Catherine didn't change her mind. She settled into life at the gas station, becoming a fixture in the small desert community. The locals, who initially viewed her with suspicion, gradually accepted her as word spread about the runaway bride who'd chosen freedom over fortune. Garrett found himself falling for her, though he tried to resist. They came from different worlds, and eventually she'd realize what she was giving up. But it was hard not to fall for someone who laughed at terrible jokes, who wasn't afraid of hard work, who saw him as an equal rather than someone beneath her station. 3 months after Catherine arrived, Richard Westbrook returned. This time he came alone, driving an unmarked rental car. He found Catherine and Garrett closing up the shop for the evening. "I want to talk to my daughter," he said, his voice tired rather than angry. "Alone." Catherine looked at Garrett, who nodded. "I'll be right inside if you need me." He watched through the window as father and daughter talked. He saw Richard's controlled gestures, Catherine's defensive posture. He couldn't hear the words, but he could see the emotion. When Catherine came back inside 30 minutes later, her eyes were red, but her expression was determined. "He wants me to come home," she said. "He's willing to call off the engagement with Malcolm. Let me choose my own path if I'll just come back to the family." Garrett felt his heart sink. Of course she'd go. She'd be crazy not to. What did he have to offer her compared to her family and their billions? "But I told him no," Catherine continued. "I told him that I've found my own path, and it's here, with you, if you'll have me." Garrett stared at her. "Cat, you can't give up your entire inheritance, your family, your future, for a gas station mechanic you've known for 3 months. Why not?" she said, stepping closer to him. "You gave up your safety and security to protect a stranger. You stood up to one of the most powerful men in the world because it was the right thing to do. You showed me what it means to live with integrity, to choose freedom over fear. Why is it so hard to believe that I'd want to build a life with someone like that? Because I can't give you the life you're used to, Garrett said. I'm not rich, Kat. This business barely breaks even most months. I live in a tiny apartment. I can't buy you jewelry or take you to fancy restaurants or give you the comfort you deserve. Catherine took his face in her hands. I don't want jewelry or fancy restaurants. I want someone who sees me as a person, not an asset. Someone who treats me like an equal, not property. Someone who makes me laugh and challenges me to be better and doesn't care that my father is a billionaire. I want you, Garrett Walsh. Just you. Garrett kissed her then, all his resistance crumbling. They'd figure out the details later. Right now, all that mattered was that she'd chosen him, chosen this life, chosen freedom. Richard Westbrook didn't disown his daughter as he threatened. Instead, after several more visits and long conversations, he made a reluctant peace with her choice. He couldn't understand it, couldn't fathom why she'd choose poverty over privilege. But he loved her enough to accept it. A year later, Garrett and Catherine were married in a small ceremony at the gas station, surrounded by friends from the local community. Richard attended, uncomfortable but present, still trying to understand his daughter's new life. As Catherine walked toward Garrett in a simple cotton dress, her feet bare like they'd been the day she'd run into his life, Garrett thought about how one decision to help a stranger had changed everything. He'd expected consequences, prepared for retaliation, but he'd never imagined he'd gain a partner, a love, and a renewed sense of purpose. Catherine had been fleeing an arranged marriage, running from a life she didn't choose. She'd hidden with a poor mechanic who had nothing to offer but integrity and protection. And somehow, in that dusty gas station in the middle of the Nevada desert, they'd both found what they'd been searching for: freedom, authenticity, and a love built on mutual respect rather than obligation or wealth. I'd do it again, Garrett whispered as they danced their first dance. Even knowing the trouble it would cause, I'd help you again. I know, Catherine said, resting her head on his shoulder. That's why I love you. Sometimes the greatest treasures come disguised as problems. Sometimes the person running from billions finds more wealth in a simple life with someone who values her for herself. And sometimes a poor mechanic hiding a runaway bride discovers that the real fortune isn't what you have, but who you choose to share your life with. If this story resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe for more tales of love, courage, and choosing freedom over fear. Leave a comment about a time when you helped someone at great personal cost, or when someone stood up for you when no one else would. Share your thoughts on how we can all be braver in protecting those who are vulnerable, even when it means standing against powerful forces. Remember, real wealth isn't measured in money or status, but in integrity, compassion, and the courage to do what's right, even when it costs you everything.